you're no spring chicken. That was the very first thing my neighbor said when I told her I was pregnant. Can you believe it? Maybe she just didn't believe me, but I don't hold it against her. She's been a tad bit cranky ever since she found that scorpion in her girdle drawer. Maybe she couldn't understand how much of a miracle this was for me. Well, Zechariah and I, we tried our whole lives to have a child of our own. By the time most of my hair turned gray and Zechariah's turned loose, we had given up hope. But nothing is impossible with God. He seemed to delight in making life in impossible barren places. And as if that weren't enough, the angel who brought us this unbelievable news had more to say. This child, our son, would be used by God to prepare our people for the coming of the Messiah. It was just all too much of a gift to be real. And then I thought, how would we even begin to train a child for a job like this? Oh, but God had the details covered too. And it kept getting better. When I was about 6 months along, my cousin, Mary, came for a visit. No sooner had she said hello, that my unborn baby, my little son, jumped and flipped inside me. Right then, God opened my eyes to clearly see this young girl standing in our home was also with a child, and he would be called Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. 9 months later, we got the news from Bethlehem, and I looked over at Zechariah, holding our very own little miracle. And I had one of those God moments. That moment when you realize that God had different plans. He brought us life to barren places. He hadn't forgotten about us, and he would never leave us alone again.
Had I known then what I know now, there would have been room in my inn. I would have given up my own bed for them, but I didn't know. How could I know? And this place was packed. I had never seen so many people in Bethlehem. The government had made everyone in the world go back to their hometown and register. Government has to make their money, right? And since nobody wants to stay with their in-laws, I'm booked solid. But I remember that day well. The space we had was all taken up, I think, 2 hours before dinner. And it was probably about 2 hours after dinner that they showed up. And talk about desperate. He was scared and exhausted, and she was about to burst. And as they're walking up to me, I'm planning what to say in my head. I'm thinking I'll say, "So sorry, we have no room left." But when they get to me, they just stand there for a minute. And he's looking down, trying to gather his thoughts, and she winces ever so slightly. And then he looks up at me and he says, "Please." That's all he said. Please. Let me tell you a story. I'm 5 years old and I'm helping my mom set the table. And I tell her that she's put too many plates out. And she looks at me and she says, "You always make room. You never know who will show up." And I gave her this look like, "What?" And she says, empathetically, "You never know who God may bring to you. You always make room." So I look at this man and this very pregnant wife and say, "I don't know where we'll put you, but we'll make room." So we made room. It wasn't the best room, but it was all I had to give to them. So Mom was right. You always make room, especially when it comes to God.
It started out just as any other night, except for that angel. Us shepherds, we don't get that much excitement. That angel came right up to us. So bright, so beautiful. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Sam, you've been out in the pasture far too long. I was thinking the same thing, until that angel started talking to me. Don't be afraid, the angel said. I shouted right back at him, too late. Then the angel said, now wait, I got it right here. Bread, milk, no, that's my grocery list. He said, I have good news of great joy that will be for all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. Then he said, he's lying in a manger, wrapped in clothes. Now go find him. Okie dokie, I said. One of the other shepherds said, what are we waiting for? Let's get up, let's go to Bethlehem. So we hightailed it out of there and we found the beautiful baby, just as the angel said. I was a different woman that night, because I knew that God chose me. And in my life, no one had ever chosen me before. I'll never forget what the angel said. Good news to all people. And I knew that meant me too.
God had been silent for over 400 years. We knew because we have been listening. In a sense. My job? My job was to listen. People who talk a lot, you don't call them wise, do you? No. There are a lot of other names we have for them, and wise is not one of them. In my position, I looked for signs everywhere. We watched the stars, we watched them and tried to interpret what they were telling us. I read of a star that would announce of a new king. And then, out of nowhere, a star appeared. This star was different. It was like a beacon in the night. After watching it for a while, I felt that this was the star the Jews had been looking for. The star that was foretold in their ancient scriptures. The star of the Messiah. So I followed it. There were a few of us, and yes, we actually followed a star. It was so bizarre. This star led us. It moved and we followed. And eventually, it led us to Jerusalem. That's where we met Herod. He claimed he also wanted to worship the Messiah. So he asked us, no, he demanded us, that once we found the newborn, that we'd come back to him and tell him. But we were warned in a dream not to trust this man. For over 2 years, we journeyed with the star, guiding us all the way to Judea. And then it stopped, shining down over a small cottage. Our journey ended not in a place fit for a king, but at the home of a peasant. Our journey ended not at a palace, but at a small cottage. This was it. We gathered our thoughts, our gifts, and did what we could to contain our emotions. And behind those doors, we found a new king. A king who commanded the movement of the stars in the sky and yet came to live among his people. God was finished being silent. He spoke, and his words became flesh to dwell with his people. We knelt down that night. Yes, we kneeled before the baby boy, and each of us laid gifts at his feet. We had to. 400 years of silence, broken by the cries of the new king. Yes, he spoke, and we worshipped.
It was the longest, most difficult, scariest, exciting, confusing, and most wonderful day of my life. When you realize that God has allowed you to become a father, there's nothing I can compare that to. And when it seems that he has deemed you fit to be the stepfather to his son, that's a bit overwhelming. He is a perfectly healthy, happy baby boy. He was born like most every other baby. I understand why they call it labor. I've worked every day ever since I was 12. And never in my life have I worked as hard as Mary did that night. And Mary, she was amazing through all of it, not just the birth, but the months of people talking about us behind our backs, the week-long journey to Bethlehem. And after all that, I watched as she turned a feeding trough into a cradle, and it didn't even faze her. She's amazing. Through it all, she never asked why. She just did everything God asked her to do, knowing that even if she didn't understand everything that was happening, the thing she did know was that God was in control. She was open to His will. Now I understand why God chose her. I really do. The thing I can't figure out is why He chose me.
As long as I could remember, we've been waiting for the Messiah to come to us. It's just always been that way. I'd always knew He'd come, but let's be honest, it's not like I'm from Jerusalem or someplace special. I'm just a girl, a nobody, from Nazareth. Everyone knows not much good comes out of Nazareth. Never has. I thought for sure that angel had come to the wrong house with his announcement. But if this is what God wanted, then who was I to say that He's wrong? And Joseph, God bless that wonderful man, he could have joined in with everyone else, sent me away, had me killed. But he never broke his promise to marry me. So when he had to go to Bethlehem for the census, I was honored to ride at his side, even with the bloated ankles and heartburn and 9 months of pregnancy behind me. You know those pregnant women who try different things to induce labor, like take frequent walks or eat spicy food? What they should do is go for a long, bumpy 70-mile trip to Bethlehem. Because not long after we arrived, well, I've never done this myself before, but it was time. With every wave of pain, I tried to ignore the fact that I would be having this baby without my family to help me, without the familiarity of home. When Jesus was finally born, I forgot all about that though. I wrapped him in cloths and made the most comfortable bed I could find with the only thing we had, an animal's feeding trough. Joseph said I should have been sleeping then, but I just couldn't stop staring at him. There he was, the one the angel told me about. My heart was so full, but my words weren't large enough to express it. I wasn't the first young mother to bring a baby into the world. It's always been that way. But as I looked down at my son, my Redeemer, I know he would be the one to change everything, because he had already changed me.
See this small box? It's a gift for the whole family. Let me back up. See, we're a Christmas decorations after Thanksgiving dinner kind of family. The second that stuffing hits the Tupperware, it's ornaments and Christmas lights. And truth be told, we don't take them down until mid-January, minimum. Part of that might be that we just love having the Christmas atmosphere in our home. Or it could be that we're lazy. There's a lot of ways to be lazy, you know. Even though we were dedicated to the tradition of it all, the routine of it, we're lazy when it came to our hearts. See, we have this tradition where we'd set out the nativity out on the coffee table. We did it diligently, routinely. It was almost like we're trying to get past this hurdle so we could watch our Christmas movies. So I had this idea. See anything missing? That's right. I stole baby Jesus. Plucked him right out of there. Started doing it 4 years ago because I wanted him being there to mean something. So I took him. Baby napped him. Messiah napped him. Regardless, I took him. So you're probably wondering, what? Why would any sane person hide Jesus during Christmas? And I think therein lies the issue. A, I'm not that sane. And B, for me, Jesus just become another decoration, another ornament, another tradition. And I didn't want him to be that to me anymore, to my family. That's why I take him every year.
Wait, where's baby Jesus? He's gone!
Wish you could have seen that first year. It was bedlam. The mystery of baby Jesus' whereabouts were at the forefront of everyone's minds. Mysterious ransom notes started showing up. We searched for clues, pursued new leads, and each night we would come up with new theories at dinner. For 3 weeks, the house was soaked in conspiracy.
What if someone came and took him? Yeah! What if an elf took him? Yeah! What if he disappeared? Yeah!
I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but I do know that there's nothing more important than seeking Christ, especially during Christmas. My kids are totally into it. 2 years ago, the girls made missing posters and put them all throughout town.
Maybe someone will save us and we'll find baby Jesus. Yeah!
Last year, they made a Facebook page for it. You wanna know where I hid him this year? I buried him in our flower garden. The last clue is Ephesians 5:2. And walk in the way of love, just as Jesus had loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering to God. It took them a while, but eventually they figured it out.
Mom! We found him! 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 We found him!
Now, I have to go back and hide him again. He has to stay hidden until Christmas Eve. Because on Christmas Eve, we turn off all the phones and the TV, and it's just quiet. He came into this world quietly, and I want my family to absorb that moment. Then, we'll open this gift, this wonderful, amazing, God-breathed, prophecy-filled gift. We'll set him in the manger, and we'll take time to talk about why Jesus was the greatest Christmas present ever. Jeremiah 29:13 states that you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. That's what I want for my family. A simple way to keep the main thing. The main thing. I want that for me too. People have been waiting for hundreds of years for the Messiah. What's 30 days for us? Time to go hide. I love this.